Year 6 and welcome to Tuesday Literacy Lesson. So we are still working on the Blackbeard text, which starts on page 33, but today we're looking at the inference questions. Now, to get your brains going this morning, I've got something a little bit different for you. So we are going to do a little Kahoot quiz, okay? So I've prepared a Kahoot quiz, having a look at some of the vocabulary in the text. So what I'd like you to do now is go on to Kahoot, put the game pin in and have a go at the questions. Okay, so they are all on vocabulary, multiple choice, thinking about the vocabulary in the Blackbeard text to remind you, because it was last week that you looked up lots of words. So it'll just remind you of some of the vocabulary to help you today. So pause the video now and have a go at the Kahoot. Okay, so hopefully you did really well with the Kahoot. I'm sure you did, and I'll be having a look at how you did. Okay, so today we are thinking about inference questions. Now, some of these texts have been quite tricky, and the inference questions are tricky because the answer isn't exactly in the text. You've got to look a bit deeper, or you've got to use some evidence to support what you are saying. Okay, so I'm going to go through a few of the question types that are a little bit different today and give you some tips on how to do them. Okay, so the first one I want to look at is a find and copy one, a find and copy a phrase. That can be quite tricky because it's really hard not to just copy loads and loads and loads down. Okay, so we're going to have a really good think about how to do these and make sure that you're only selecting the part that the question is asking for. So this one says, look at the paragraph beginning. So always really important to make sure that you are looking at that paragraph. That's really important because you've got to find a piece of evidence from there. So this one is the paragraph beginning, although many of the pirates. And then it says, find and copy a phrase. So a phrase is a group of words. It doesn't have to have a verb in. That would make it a clause. It just needs to be a few words. You've got to be really careful that you don't write loads and loads and loads. It's just got to be a few words. That shows it is not certain that Blackbeard is an actual person. So when you're thinking about certainty, you're often thinking about your modal verbs. So things like should, would, could, might. So all of those words suggest that something's not definite. So that might be a tip today for one of your questions. So I'm looking for a phrase that shows that something is not certain. So I'm going to make sure first that I'm looking at the right paragraph. So it's the one, although many of the pirates. So I've highlighted it. It's really important that I use that paragraph. I've also highlighted find and copy. So I'm not using my own words here. I'm copying something from the text. Then a phrase, we've talked about that. Not certain, an actual person is going to give me a clue, I think, that'll help me find the bit that I need to help me to answer this question. So I'm going to go to the text. And here is the paragraph I'm looking at. So although many of the pirates. So I'm going to have a really good read. I'm looking for actual person. So remember that was what I highlighted to look for in the text that will give me an idea what I need to look for. So here it says an actual person, and it says, but he is thought to have been. Now, that doesn't say he definitely is. He is thought to have been. So I'm going to use that as my phrase, thought to have been. Because it doesn't say that he actually is. So then, that's exactly what it says in the text. So, thought to have been will be my answer. That's exactly what it says in the text because it's a find and copy question. So you've got one a little bit similar to that today as well. The second one I want to look at is an evidence one. And I know we've done evidence ones, but they're really worth going over with the inference because evidence is often what you're needed to provide. So what evidence is there that Blackbeard was a brutal captain? So this time I've highlighted evidence because I know I'm going to have to use something to back my answer up. And I've highlighted brutal captain because that's what I'm going to look for in the text to find my evidence. So back to the text. So I'm looking for brutal captain. Oh, it says here that he had a reputation as a brutal, violent captain. So I'm going to look all around that part of the text for something that tells me that he's brutal. Now, if you've done the quiz, you'll know that brutal means violent, not very nice, no mercy. He's not a very nice person. So I'm going to have a look in the text to see for some evidence that shows that. So it says that he's menacing. That means he's scary and with menacing force. So he doesn't do things gently. It's with menacing force. So I think that tells me that he was brutal. He attacked merchant ships and plundered. So if we've done the quiz, you'll know that plunder means to take violently. So again, that's something else he does. He doesn't just take things, he takes them violently. He attacked, took things violently. It also says that he's violent. So there's lots and lots of evidence there that shows that he's brutal. So I'm going to go back to my question. So again, I'm going to have another read of what the question says to make sure I'm answering it. So evidence that Blackbeard was a brutal captain. He was brutal. And then I'm going to use because it says. That he attacked ships and plundered goods. And I know that that's brutal because I know that plundered means to take violently. Okay, and then I'm going to put, it also says he was violent. Okay, so that's evidence from the text that shows that he is brutal. And I've used that really important phrase because it says, because that showed that I have used evidence from the text. So that's the second one I wanted to go through with an evidence one. So make sure when you're using an evidence question, you use because it says. So the final question that I want to go through is a little bit similar to your last question. It's quite tricky. The last couple of questions both use this vocabulary. So this one is, do you think? So these ones are do you think questions. So there's no real right or wrong answer. It can be what you think, but you must use evidence. So do you think that Blackbeard was a good or bad person? Okay, that one's quite a tricky one. You might have evidence for both. Use evidence to support your answer. So you can choose either. Either of those things is absolutely fine as long as you have got evidence. So this is a bit of a whole text kind of question. You've got to go back through all of the evidence and think, do I think he's good or bad? Do I think he's both? Anything is fine as long as you've got evidence to support it. So if I go back to the text, I'm going to have a look. Now, I know from the last question that I've done that he's brutal and he's violent and he attacks and he takes things from people and he takes them violently. So that's some evidence to show that he's a bad person. So I'm going to have a look now to see if I can find anything for good. I'm going to have a quick skim through. So it does say that when he took some hostages, once he got what he wanted, he would release them. And it says there, actually, that he kept his word. When he got what he wanted, he released the prisoners. Maybe a little bit of evidence that he's maybe honest or a good person. I don't know. Up to you. Have a little bit more of a look. So, yeah, he did get killed in the end by somebody. I think I'm going to go with that he's a bad person. That's my choice. But remember, it's fine either way, as long as you've got evidence to support it. So I'm going to go back here. And I'm going to start mine with I think. So your first bit of the question is to say which one, whether you think he's good or bad. So I think Blackbeard was a bad person. So now I've got to give my reason. That's not enough. That wouldn't get me any marks because I'm just saying good or bad. So now I need to say why. So I'm going to say this is because he stole from people. Get my tea out. And attacked. Ships. That's what he did. But I'm going to add a little bit to show. So I'm going to put he was also brutal and violent. When he attacked. Okay, so I've answered that fully. I've said that I think he's a bad person, but I've also given lots of evidence to support why I think that. So really important on those do you think questions. So I think the other questions, I think you'll be fine to have a go at. You've got some similar to those ones that I have shown you today, so make sure you follow those tips. I hope you're enjoying the text and keep going. Okay, so your word power work for today is on page 30. Now, I only want you to do page 30. You've had quite a lot to do on your inference work today, so I just want us to focus on that page. Okay, so it is about poetry today. Now, you've got a poem down the side here to read, and then just a few little things to think about. So I just want you, just this page, just page 30. So have a read of the poem. Then it talks about repetition. So some words are repeated. So it asks you why you think they are repeated. So why you think the poet has chosen those words and phrases to repeat. So it might be things like maybe. Okay, so I might pick maybe out as something that's repeated because I've seen it repeated a couple of times. And I might say it's because the poet wants the reader to think, to put some situations in a reader's mind to make them think. So then the second one, look at the images he uses for what might be behind the door. And then it asks you what the order of the image is. So the order that he's chosen to put them in. Do you think that matters? So does it matter what order? Could they be mixed up? So again, that's do you think? So your choice. And then finally, what you think the message of the poem is. So what message is the poet trying to give in this poem? So up to you again. So that's a do you think one. So I just want you to have a think about those 3 questions today because you've done lots in your inference work. So enjoy today's work and I shall see you tomorrow.